President Trump launched one of the most openly racist attacks of his presidency, tweeting that progressive Democratic Congresswoman should go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. Joining me now is Thomas Friedman. He's a New York Times columnist and author of the best-selling book, Thank You for Being Late, an optimist's guide to thriving in the age of acceleration. Tom, I have to say, an optimist is what I need this morning. I think we all need that. When you read over the weekend what the president told these 4 Democratic congresswomen to go back to the countries they came from, what was your first reaction?
Well, John, I really would pick up on what Michael Smerconish said, which is that the president isn't talking just about or to these 4 congresswomen. He's talking about us. He's talking about we. He's talking about every Irish American whose grandparents fled the potato famine. He's talking about every Italian American whose grandparents or great-grandparents fled the Depression. He's talking about every Muslim American whose parents or grandparents fled the disorder of Lebanon or Libya or Iraq. He's talking about every Black American whose great-grandparents were forced to come here in slavery or fled disorder in Africa. He's talking about every Latin American whose family came here from Venezuela or Mexico. He's talking about we and us. Every one of us at some point, or virtually all of us, can trace our roots to what Trump has called shithole countries. Hey, Camarada, which shithole country did your grandparents come from? Berman. Which shithole country did your grandparents come from? We all came here. We all came here because this is not a country of blood and soil, which Trump thinks. It's a country built around a universal idea that out of many, we make one. And I know one thing absolutely for sure, that we have a president of the United States who could not pass the simplest citizenship test that is administered to every new immigrant in this country, because he has no idea what this country is about.
You know, Camarada, go back to Italy, you know?
I mean, and by the way, my great-grandparents, when they came in 1904, were not held in cages, by the way.
No, you know, it would be Berman, go back to Russia, Poland, Tom, I'm sure, you know, go back somewhere. And Tom Friedman, I will note, the Friedmans you are from the Minnesota congressional district that Ilhan Omar represents right now. So before she was a new immigrant there, your family were new immigrants there.
Absolutely. I come from the little town outside of Minneapolis called St. Louis Park. Before my parents moved there was a predominantly white, a Christian suburb, and then they welcomed, frankly, the biggest Jewish immigration of any community in the upper Midwest back in the early 50s. And a generation later, they welcomed the Somalis. And that's the story of the country. But, John, when you have a president without shame, backed by a party without spine, backed by a network called Fox without integrity, you get this kind of aberrant behavior because no one is drawing red lines around him. The only thing I would say about this to me is that it's a sign he must be worried about something. Because anytime he goes to this extreme, it's because he thinks he needs to gin up his base. And it may go back to those polls that say he's not doing so well.
I want to read you a reaction we did get from a conservative political leader. It just happens to be the conservative prime minister of the United Kingdom, Theresa May. She put out a statement just moments ago. The language that was used to refer to these women was completely unacceptable. That is from the British Prime Minister Theresa May. How come we've heard from Theresa May in, besides one single member of Congress, no other Republicans, Tom?
Because Trump, using Twitter, has basically energized the Republican base and made every Republican leader fearful that if they take on the president, he will primary them. It's one of the most disgusting and frightening things I think we've ever seen in American politics. We have a president saying fundamentally non-American things. And as I said, I can't say this often enough. He is a man without shame. But what enables him to do this is that he has a party without spine, and they're amplified by a network without integrity.
I want to read you. We just got the first response from the White House itself. This comes from Mark Short, who is the chief of staff from Vice President Pence. So let's listen to Mark Short.
Well, if the Democrats choose to want to unite around Ilhan Omar, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for them. So when people write that the president has racist motives here, it's just look at the reality of who's actually serving in Donald Trump's cabinet. He's making a point about a great frustration a lot of people feel that I think it's hard to find anything Ilhan Omar has actually said since elected to Congress that's been positive about the United States of America.
It's that first part of the comment that interested me the most, Tom, and perhaps you as well. Again, from being from the Minnesota congressional district that Ilhan Omar now represents. If the Democrats want to unite around Ilhan Omar, it will be interesting to see how that plays out for them. The White House is trying to frame this around her.
Yeah, well, clearly, because she's the one who was not born in the United States. Look, I have issues with things Ilhan Omar has said, and that's not a secret. I've written about that, and I've spoken about that on this work, in fact. She has trucked at times in anti-Semitic tropes. She's said some things about 9/11, which I find very disturbing. But that is a totally separate issue. We can have that political debate, but you don't lump together 4 women, 3 of whom are born in America, 1 abroad, who have spoken out on a lot of issues, and other them, basically do to them what Trump tried to do to Obama, which is to say you are not an American, you are not a real American. He fabricated that Obama was born in Africa, not in America. And when you go down that road, John, what you do is send a signal to all bigots around this country, bigots and racists, that these people are not of us. And that does really make them targets in a country full of guns. It is incredibly dangerous what he is trucking in.
I got to say, Thomas Friedman has agreed to stick around with us for one more segment. Tom, I have another question for you about what you think the biggest threat to this country is right now. We'll get to that. And also some of the threats you see around the world.